Welcome to Big Talk. I have a special guest today, and it's no other than Professor Ayade, the governor of Cross River State. Welcome to this show.
Thank you so very much.
Well, how would you sum up 3 years in office?
I would like to sum it up by first saying, I give God the grace, I give all the glory to God for keeping us alive to see my 3rd year anniversary. And also, very importantly, to thank the people of Cross River State and to say in summary, I understand the challenges of my people, addressing and focusing on their needs. And in 3 years, I have done what I think I can to ensure that I reduce tension and poverty in the state.
Well, as quite brief, you had 1.5 years to battle in court. How did that affect your capacity to operate as a governor?
Well, sadly, it's almost a tradition in Nigeria that once after election, you have a year or two to go in court, whether the point is valid or not valid. As a lawyer myself, I was very sure that I had no reasons to be in the court. But unfortunately, it has become an ordeal that every politician goes through. And it just shows the backwardness of our times. And as a country, we've just come to a tradition where it has become a clear cycle. From elections to court, from court to elections, elections back to court. And so that cycle has not allowed us as government the luxury to focus on governance. And so what we have is primordial politics focused on personal interest, developing narratives that are otherwise not pristine, not based on the needs of your people. The court ordeal itself is a huge distraction. And for 1.5 years, you will never, ever, ever feel certain that you're a governor until you are out of the Supreme Court. And that's the situation here. So literally speaking, the first 1.5 years, I found myself in a macabre dance. You're never sure where you're going. Because as you all know in Nigeria, you never know when you're out of the court. You know the law is not looking out for the truth. It's the fact, and the facts can be constructed. So I am shocked for such an insignificant issue. I went all the way from the High Court through the Court of Appeal to the Supreme Court, taking 1.5 years of my credible time facing unnecessary exposure and stress. But I'm happy that that is all put behind us, and I've done a catch-up to be able to find a recovery space for myself. And I'm happy 3 years down the line, I have a lot to show for the 3 years in office.
Well, before we go to that, one of the things that grabbed headlines in your early days in office was the fact that you were employing so many people in government as advisors and so on. And I was saying, oh, was it an ego thing, or were you just trying to show that you're a people's man by getting all of these people? What jobs are they going to do, you know?
Basically, I hold a master's degree in business administration, and my core area of specialty is developing economics. In sluggish economics, and in very backward circumstance and situation like Nigeria, with excessive population, with youth unemployment hitting the ceiling, any government that understands the sociology, the anthropology of our people will recognize the fact that there is no infrastructure, there is no development program that comes before food on the table. And so the expansion of government, creating so many appointments, was to allow me an opportunity to reduce the social tension and allow every young crossover an opportunity to find food on his or her table, so that I can focus on the re-engineering and the solution architecture that can construct a new horizon of opportunity for the people.
Is that Ayade's version of stomach infrastructure?
Well, here is hands, food on the table, but hands on the plow. So it's actually not stomach infrastructure. It is indeed an opportunity for us all to come together and let's prepare the dish. But to do so, you have to first have something in your stomach to hold yourself. And so today, we have a lot of creative inventions from these same young people that people thought I was just over expanding government. Again, it's also an Ayadesian theory. It's an advanced college of thought which originates from myself, which is an effort to resolve the conflict between Adam Smith and Keynesian economics. Adam Smith believes that let the forces of demand and supply calibrate price. Keynesian theory thinks that it is completely different to allow things to go uncontrollably because all circumstances are not equal. Therefore, government must calibrate and find a way to intervene. And that's why there are things like paychecks, expansion regimes, and all of that. So there must be a deliberate effort from government to get involved and intervene to create an opportunity for society to survive. That is what explains bailout. That is what explains paychecks. That's what explains all sorts of social packages, which runs in conflict with Adam Smith. But to what extent will you take the Keynesian theory before it gets to a point where it becomes cataclysmic? So what I've done is to do a psychedelic and a kaleidoscopic balance between the Keynesian theory and the Adam Smith theory. And that's where the Ayadesian theory came in, to moderate the extreme nature of the Adam Smith theory and also to reduce the excessive sociology that characterizes Keynesian theory, which says, look, yes, government must intervene. Government, in my concept, government must take people during recession, hunger, and pain. Government has to expand to accommodate that pressure that comes with recession. I was sworn in under recession, so I could see the difficulty. The oil price was nosediving at a very incredible speed. It was very clear that the harbinger of extreme poverty was becoming orgasmic, and if nothing is done, we're going to have a social tension that will degenerate into full-time criminality on the streets. And so the Ayadesian theory said, look, why don't you come? By the way, Ayadesian theory is myself, Ayade, yes. So it's my postulation, yeah. And I'm sure I'm going to do that in my PhD in whatever I choose to do by my second PhD. So I came in to say, look, I need to find a way to get all these young people to work. When they work, as they are working to earn a living, whether I really need the service or not, it allows me time to focus to create a private sector and industry-driven economy. Cross River State had become too dependent on the federal allocation. And so there was no creativity to find an alternative expression of capacity other than waiting on federal allocation. So the Ayadesian theory allowed the luxury of the amalgam of all these young people on the dining table, with each person having a whole. Now, what has that helped me to do? I realized under this concept that once I can create the industries, I can then lease out the industries to professionals, thereby government catalyzing the existence of a private sector. They evacuate these excess hands that are taken during recession and evacuate them to the private sector. What have I done, therefore? I have agreed that the forces of demand and supply are critical, but I've also agreed that the intervention of government is critical, but that intervention must be time-sensitive. And so I periodize it in such a way that governments, particularly states and federal governments, have a responsibility to be in business. So if a state is not in business, who would be? If you reserve it for private sector, where is the private sector in Cross River State? Where is the private sector in Nigeria? Perhaps we may mention 3-4 persons. And even those names, they still depend on government patronage. If government was really to operate without providing beacons for escape, you see that exactly. So you know what I'm saying. Yeah. You see that it will be difficult for them to breathe. So you take the Chinese model, take the Singaporean model.
But the Chinese have moved from the Mao years and the years of Deng Xiaoping and so on. They've kind of liberalized.
Yeah, but we're just 19 years old. But they started from here. State-held infrastructure. If you go to China, the biggest corporations today are state-owned. Yeah. China Harbour, state-owned. The biggest harbour construction company in the world. China Railways, state-owned. China Telecoms is state-owned. I cannot understand why Nigeria thinks that Look, when did America have their own private sector? Britain until 1984. They didn't have a private sector.
The industrial zone that you're developing, you said it's about 5,000 hectares or so, and it's quite massive, and it looks like it has the potential for a lot of jobs. Now we had something that one of your predecessors, which was Tinapa. It was also touted as one of the great innovations of governance at one time. It now lies fallow. Two questions. What is going to happen to Tinapa? The second one, with this massive work you are doing with the Ayade Industrial Park, what signature are you going to put there that will make it outlive your time, so it doesn't end up like a Tinapa?
If I had the luxury of time, I would have asked you first, what is Tinapa? Because if you understand Tinapa, then it will be easier for me to explain. What is Tinapa?
It's supposed to be a free trade zone. That's it. A big free trade zone.
Okay. So if from that perspective you look at Tinapa, we have a free trade zone without really federal government giving it the software that allows it to breathe as a free trade zone. It is still illegal for you to operate from Tinapa without being made to pay. They will still shut you down. So the necessary softwares and infrastructure that's required for Tinapa to run as a free trade zone had not been formalized and signed off by federal government. And so when you ship in there, they will still clamp in your goods. You still have to pay the taxes. Until recently, that I met with the new Comptroller General, and he had to send a delegation, and we're still working through the process where you can now ship goods straight into Tinapa. That has not been there. Tinapa up till today has not been connected to national grid. Tinapa today is dealing with the issues of they don't have even a key word to land. So if you're a free trade zone and you're supposed to receive goods at no cost, you don't have power, you don't even have a landing bay, it becomes far more difficult for it to take off. The cost of Tinapa to really kickstart in the spirit and in good intention of the former governor is so huge that the cumulative cost of building Tinapa and the attendant loans that came with it, it's almost crippling the energy that is required to get it back to life.
You're talking about the sociology of Tinapa, and that you cannot operate Tinapa in the way it was conceived. You know, when the environment itself did not have enough economic heft to support it. I thought they wanted to support it with a lot of, like the Dubai, like tourism, like they have to have people pouring in, and not necessarily the indigents or the residents around are supposed to make it what they wanted it to be, but to gain a lot of heft from people who are coming from outside to help the economy.
Again, it will take a full day to simply explain to you why Dubai is a success story. Yeah. Dubai is at the Middle East. The real center of manufacturing today is in the Far East. The consumption is in Africa and Europe. So Dubai is in between the West and the Far East. And at the Middle East, it serves as a transshipment point. Even if you look at your air travels, if I am going to US, I'm actually much more comfortable to go with Emirates from here and get to Dubai, spend a day or two, break it there, and use an A380 and fly to the US. Yeah. And so there are other factors other than going to go and shop that takes me to Dubai. Dubai also did some social liberalization that allows people from Bahrain, from Saudi, who come from very strict religious settings, and to ventilate when they get into Dubai, and come back and wear on their jeans and T-shirts and feel human.
Like other people.
Exactly. And so some of those intricacies that if you don't understand, you just think it's a big, complex, beautiful shopping mall. No, it's not a beautiful shopping mall. But trust me, with the port that they built, with the duty-free status of Dubai, it became easier for a man who is manufacturing out of China to now have a base in Dubai, so that the man coming from extreme west or Africa will stop in Dubai and shop. That is not the case. The name Nigeria is not the first choice for a man who wants to transit. Can you even imagine a flight from Washington, D.C. going to South Africa, stops over in Ghana, not Nigeria? So there's a mentality, there is an international perception of Nigeria. That factor was not computed in the calculus of the viability of Tinapa. There are so many factors I can list.
You agree with me that it was conceptually deficient?
No, I think if that same Tinapa was situated in Lagos, it would have been a success. Because the first thing in tourism is local purchase power. If you go to Disney World in Kissimmee in Florida, Americans flood there. Yeah. Americans don't care if there is a Paris Disney. They're just fine flying from Houston and go to Florida for their holiday. Nigerians will rather shop in London at a higher price than shop for the same good and say, I bought it in Calabar. So there's an
just like the Chinese also do. They prefer to go to Paris to buy Louis Vuitton and to buy it
the Louis Vuitton in Beijing. So we have this third world mentality, first generation inferiority complex. That's why I still once more say, I understand the glitterazzi of Tinapa is healthy enough. So what do I do? Do I allow all of that to run to waste? No. And that's why I fought very hard to get the formal approval from Colonel Hamid, who is the Comptroller General of Customs, who sent a delegation here and make sure that he tidied us up. Today we can ship into Tinapa. We have big emporia there that are looking for people to take, for us to lease out. But seeing the difficulty in getting patronage for Tinapa, even now that I've actually finally approved a contract to link up Tinapa for the first time in history to national grid, it is obvious that it will still be difficult to have a lot of traffic to Cross River State at this time. So what is the wise thing to do? Either turn it to medical center of excellence or into a first-class university. And that is in the offing, which is part of why I was traveling across the globe looking for educational partnership to be able to bring full value. There's a team which is in town today. Tomorrow, they are going with the deputy governor to inspect Tinapa for conversion into a university of advanced research and of advanced value. That's possibly one way, but it has come with its own pain.
Now, I'll talk about Ayade Industrial Park. Now, you have very fascinating. This is your rice structure there, with the fact that you'll be seeding, there'll be seedling, and itself is going to be a counter narrative to what we have in Nigeria, where a lot of the rice does not have nutrients. They cannot, but just going to contain and restore the nutrients that can make our rice not just a matter of just filling the stomach with empty things. And then you're going to do that by even exporting for foreign exchange, as you said, a way of trying to not depend on national, the handout from the federal government every month. Now, with all of this you're putting, how are you sure this thing is going to be institutionally viable and also sustainable even after you're out of office?
Definitely it's a very tough one. It's a catch-22 situation. But let me just help you to make it a lot easier. Nigerians have a mentality set. You build a garment factory, 100% state-owned. If you sell it you've stolen government money. If you keep it, by the time you leave office, your successor may not have the same steam and may not give it the same attention. Over time, it undergoes atrophy, senescence, and it dies off. And so the most reasonable thing to do to balance between your name integrity and sustain the business is to evacuate each of the businesses that I have set up that has found stability, evacuate it into the full technical professional operators. Luckily, because I'm wise enough, I started my government by starting with my major projects. Contrary to the opinion that one would have thought that I should have been more focused on rural roads, rural electrification, rural water supply, and that's what the people will feel in order that I get re-elected. And I said, no, I am not a politician in that traditional sense of it. I am looking at how to bring value. So if I have started with all of those projects, and they have all matured, 12 factories maturing in my first term, I have a full time to nurse them to full independence. And by the time they are fully ripe and now making profit, that time Cross River State will now divest and recover their money, work out, and we would have created a private sector. But government would have initiated, invested, and set it up to that level. So phase one, today, we have a company out of Atul, out of India, that's interested in taking over the garment factory. And when they take it, they run in on a model where we have a percentage sharing. And I'm watching them and I'm setting a target. This is how much you are to deliver to the state government. And if that starts to work, it's already independent of Cross River State government under my watch. So it will mature out and become self-sustaining. Look at the rice seedling plant. Last year alone, Central Bank spent close to 70 billion on rice inputs under the rice Anchor Borers program. Today, Cross River State have set up the first well-certified seedling center in Nigeria and indeed Africa. So if federal government is really sincere and committed to agriculture, the investment I've put here will require that more than 50% of all that fund spent on procurement of seedlings and seeds for rice will now come from here. That is over 40 billion. That is more than, that is almost my, how many years allocation?
Your allocation is 2 billion every month, about.
Yes, thereabout. When you so tell me, how can 2 billion do all of this?
So tell us, how have you been? You have answered it earlier that you do some kind of arrangement, with people who can invest, to come and invest. But that does not really explain enough how you get 2 billion virtually every month. You are paying debts on Tinapa.
Let me just help you. Let me just help you. Africans must come to an end with this their continuous dependence on money. Naira and Kobo has never solved any problem. Just like when I listen to government talk about foreign direct investment. Foreign direct investment cannot take a country out of the woods. No foreigner comes to invest for the prosperity of your nation. He only comes to extort. The true value you bring is when you close your doors and focus and bring in your intellect and bring out the best out of your country. Isolationism.
That's strong.
That's the model that has worked for China. That's the model that has worked for Singapore. I don't know, the Asian tigers. That's the model. I don't know why Nigeria will continue to say, why would you have our currency running at 360 naira to a dollar when the factors that govern our exchange rate are not domestically controlled? They are not within our control. It's the price of oil in international market space, basically, which is not a function of the internal economy of Nigeria. So that's why countries like Malta, small countries, they put an irrevocable conversion rate between their currency and the US as law. Because in economics, if you say, let the forces of demand and supply determine the value of your local currency, you have no forces, you have no control on how to regulate other factors under consideration. And so, if you take UK, for example, there's a deliberate policy to make sure that the pound remains a very superior currency. But the Kuwaiti currency is much stronger than the pound. What do they export out of Kuwait? Nothing. The whole of... so I don't see how Nigeria cannot one day sit and say, sorry, our main source of foreign exchange earning is from oil today, and I'm sure that will be so for the next 8 years. If that is so, this is the time for us to strengthen the value of our local currency. By the way, if you are an investor, would you rather want to come and invest in an economy where you harvest tissue paper called Naira? Or you rather want to go to where the exchange rate between that currency and the dollar is strong, so that once you make money from there, it means a lot of money out there? And I've had this discussion severally, and I think the president agrees with me very strongly that the Naira didn't need to be devalued. It didn't need to. So Cross River is focusing on massive production of rice seeds and seedlings, including provision of agricultural services, tractorization, land clearing, land preparation, planting and harvesting from Cross River Agri Development Company, CATCO, another SPV, standalone providing agricultural support services. You look at the pharmaceutical factory producing vaccines, drugs, tablets and capsules, including syrups and what have you, focusing on the entire Niger Delta. Today, there's no pharmaceutical company in the whole of the Niger Delta. We've got one standing today. And I'm just discussing only the factories you've seen. We are putting a chocolate plant. The main cocoa processing plant is in Ikom, being built by Biola, which is the #1, the Rolls Royce in the food processing industry. The vitaminized rice plant is being built in Ogoja. And today, if you go to Ikori, in Yako, you have our toothpick factory. If you go to Akankpa here, you have our piles and pylon factory. And then the poultry farms coming up in Obubra. Yeah. And then you have our own Calavita, which is our own instant noodles coming up. And then you have Kalachika, which is our own frozen chicken coming in massively. Now, what have I done? I have focused on food. Have you stopped and asked yourself, the world estimates that Nigeria will be the third largest country by 2050. By 2025, Nigeria will be hitting, by estimation, Nigeria will be hitting close to 300 million. We're not going to have an expanded landmass. Vertical farming is still strange to us. Nobody is looking at food. There is a research work done by Cavenco of Spain that shows that in Nigeria, West Africa, Africa as a whole, Sub-Saharan Africa, the protein deficiency is so huge that it will take thousands and thousands of factories to come in here to find ways of creating protein need. So we took yellow maize cultivation in partnership with a company out of South Africa. And we're talking to American Embassy. You can see their consular here with me this afternoon to see how we can deal with some companies out of the US for the cultivation of grains. So just come back in 2 months when we're commissioning those plants. You will see what you're going to experience. There's no way those businesses will not thrive. We have an order for $12 million of cocoa, Cross River cocoa, because our cocoa is organic. I have just put an organic fertilizer production plant. I showed it to you. Yes, so all of this on the superhighway route. The whole intention is that we earn our dollar without looking at oil. You can see that the industrial park, you saw the German group, FEE, building the big power plant that will supply all the energy for the industrial park. Yeah. And that's why we are using this opportunity to tell the entire country, and indeed the world, that if you have a piece of land in the Ayade Industrial Park, which is off the superhighway, 15 minutes to the proposed deep sea port, and 4 minutes to the airport, you have no electricity bills to pay because the power is 100% solar with a 2 megawatts backup cadmium lithium battery. So you have 24 hours electricity. You will not pay a dime. You have no problems. You have no issues with diesel. Come take the land once you can set industries and create jobs. We're a population of about 4 million people, with over 65% of that active young people under the age of 35. It is cataclysmic for me to focus on putting roads, rural electricity, when there will never be light, when the roads will run out in 6 months, and when there's hunger. So I rather put factories and industries that create immediate jobs. You were in the garment factory, almost 3,000 workers. You are in the rice, almost 5,000 workers. You can see in a short while, I have created a job bank of almost 10,000 people within a small enclave that are not depending on government for survival. Even if government will allow them some leverage and provide them a shoulder to lean on, until they find their feet. And I've got 5 years to nurture it to maturity.
By saying that you have 5 years, you're saying that your re-election is a technicality.
No, it's a given. You can feel the pulse in the atmosphere. You can feel it. If you're not doing well, you're not doing well. This is a state that has never owed salary. This is a state that since I came in, I'm not owing pension. I've just authorized the payment of 2014 gratuity, not pension.
You just paid May salary on May 1st.
May 1st. And
after paying April salary.
Exactly. And you know, people forget, they say Paris Club. We operated as government for 17 months before the first Paris Club money. In that 17 months, I never owed 1 day. I've never paid salary beyond 25th of the month. Even when we get zero allocation. Check the records. There are times Cross River State get zero allocation. There are times, there was a month I saw our allocation 800 million. And I see another state, for the month that I'm getting 800 million, another state is getting 12, 15, 16 billion. If I tell you the story of Cross River income, you would certainly think I'm mad for the kind of projects. You know, because people take every project from the perspective of money, money, money. Please, let's let money rest. Use your brain for some time. You see the superiority of the intellect over the muzzle. Money is too, and I don't know where it's coming from. Everything is about money. And so the black man is adrift in chaos. And so there is no stability of character because the focus and issues of values are accentuated and celebrated around money. So tell me, Ibadan-Lagos Expressway, its dualization started under Obasanjo regime. Today, I hear that President Buhari has just released money for the contractor to remobilize to site. That's about 97 to 103 kilometers project. I am doing 148 kilometers dualization. In my regime, when I announced it, it looked like it was impossible. I'm 80% complete. I'm done with the earthworks. Asphalting is just commencing. It's awarded for 31 billion. The other job was 67 billion. That's the capacity of intellectual engineering. And if you ask Cross River State if they have 31 billion, again, it's a subject for you to come for a lecture on how you're commoditizing the intellect and bringing value to the table. How can you be paying salaries of thousands of appointees without owing a bank? In the first instance, Cross Rivers cannot borrow because DMO, Debt Management Office, will tell you Cross River State is over-indebted to be able to borrow. So from day one...
Because you are paying money every month, like 1.5 billion.
Yes,
out of your 2 billion.
1.5 billion is just what you see. There are standing, irrevocable standing payment orders. There are things like College of Education, things like Cross River State University of Science and Technology, ITM, so many other institutional salaries that do not fall in the traditional civil service structure that comes upon my shoulders every month. But I thank God He has given me the grace that as I'm seated here, I'm not owing, and I'm not owing salaries, I'm not owing pension. Gratuities, I'm paying on as it goes. But again, it is the grace of God, but more importantly, the zeal, the commitment, the understanding that every Cross Riverian knows that before I became governor, I was known and I'm known for my personal wealth, from independent hard work, from selling my intellect, from being a consultant in the oil and gas industry. I rose to my own fame. And so I believe that it is the application of that experience and knowledge that have brought it into full utility. And that's why in Cross River State, if I ask them if I should pay salary now, they will say no. And that is, to me, my highest selling point, that my people trust me so much that they tell me, well, in other states, people are protesting and rioting for lack of salaries. Cross River, you have people protesting that the salary is coming too early and that they're eating up their money. And I take it with grim resignation, with great excitement and glory to God for allowing me the ingenuity to create that opportunity to be able to pay salary effortless. In fact, my citizens tell me that I have commonized salary. This thing that is big issue, it's no issue in Cross River. Please allow me an opportunity to mention that Cross River State has written to the federal government to say, when I came into office, because the oil and gas is my core background, I partnered with a company out of Ukraine and Russia and did a deep vision search over the Cross River State land space. And I've identified all the areas with hydrocarbon deposits. My letters and applications, the reports and every document is before Mr. President, seeking and pleading with the federal government to allow us a discretional license to be able to explore. We've done the prospecting to be able to do the full exploration, getting to advanced seismic and 3D, and finalizing with extraction, so that we can indeed produce our own crude oil. That is still waiting. I am also still waiting for the formal and final approval for the construction of the deep sea port. Now, I'd like you to use this platform to express to federal government that traditionally, politicians focus on only low-hanging fruits just to be able to win the election. And you have a governor who is thinking deep and looking into the gaze into the future. And because my opening remarks when I was being sworn in, that I will never let a Cross Riverian go to bed hungry on account of poverty. If a Cross Riverian must sweat, he should not sweat out of toil, but out of pleasure. He should sweat, say he's exercising, not because he's tilting so hard to be able to make a living.
Okay, on that very hopeful note, I end this very interesting conversation with the governor of Cross River, Professor Ayade. Thank you very much for being on this show.
Thank you so much.
That is the program this week on the platform, which returns next week. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter. My handle is @SamOmashaye. Also visit my website to read my columns at www.samomashaye.com. And until next week, be good.